Meat City, baby.
Hello and welcome back to Meat City Gaming. JD here with another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video, and today we're wrapping up the One Famous Wookiee legendary event where you can earn the new legendary Chewbacca character from the original trilogy of movies. Today we're tackling Tier 7. This is the final tier. If you complete this battle, you get Chewbacca at 7 stars, and you can use him in the raids, and he'll be at his most effective. He can go to Gear 12, so this is the big one. Unlocking him at 5 stars means you get access to the character. Tier 6 doesn't really make too much of a difference, and getting to Tier 7 means you can get the character to max power and use it in all of the event modes in the game. So this is a big one, and boy is it a step up from the Tier 6. The character requirements have jumped up now to 12 plus, and this was designed for a maxed out or pretty close to maxed out squad if you're using the original bounty hunters, and if you're using any of the new ones, you'll have some advantage with this. Bossk for me was key, so I'm using a team of Bossk lead and then a slew of the original bounty hunters. It's the same team that I used in Tier 5 and Tier 6, but their gear did increase. I did have to kit them out with a little bit extra to get through this. So Bossk is the leader. I did put his Zeta on his leadership. It allows you to regenerate protection and health when you apply debuffs to the enemy team or when they resist. And surviving the first wave of the onslaught is key here, but once you do, you need to get a little bit of regen going in order to survive. So is it 100% necessary? Probably not, but will it save your sanity from having to do this 500 times and maybe you only have to do it 50? Yeah, so for me, that was worth it. Bossk is worth it. He's a good character. I'll get use out of that Zeta, so it wasn't a waste just putting it on for this event. Bossk is also at Gear 12 for me, and I did move my most powerful arena mods over to this team, so he's running at 245 speed, which is an extra 94 speed on top of where he would be at naturally. Boba Fett is at Gear 11. I didn't take Boba to Gear 12. I wanted to see if I could get by without it, and I was able to do so. So, Gear 11 for Boba Fett, no Zeta on him at all, and with the mod set that I'm running on him, he's got an additional 128 speed, so he's running at 263. The next character we have is IG-88. IG-88 is at Gear 11. Again, this is a little bit steep of a price to pay, but the gear requirements for IG-88 aren't too bad, and we just found out that IG-88's ship is now in the game. You can unlock it at 3 stars, and it looks like these bounty hunter ships are going to be part of the new meta going forward, so having him geared up at least will make his ship more powerful. And I'm running IG-88 with a mod set that gives him an extra 95 speed, so he's up to 216 speed. Next we have Dengar. Dengar, like Bossk for me, is one of the most important characters for the run. He's at Gear 10. He just is such a Carbanti monster. The gear that he needs, it's so many of those Carbantis to get him geared up past Gear 9 to Gear 10. But I did do that. I felt it was necessary. However, I didn't have to take him past that and go to Gear 11 in order to get him to survive. He goes into stealth and so can't be targeted with a lot of big hits. So his survivability is pretty good in this battle. And I have him running with an extra 111 speed, so 214 total for Dengar. And then the 5th member of the team is Greedo. Greedo, again, has some really cool kit here that works to your advantage in this battle. I only have Greedo at Gear 9, and that was enough. Greedo, of course, was getting wiped out constantly at the start of the battle, and having him survive the opening wave was a big part of getting the RNG set up for this event. So Greedo is running with an extra 95 speed for a total of 217. So the rest of the characters are there. You can look through their kit if you want, and you can see what I've got on them in terms of the mod sets and the statistics for those characters. So we're going to run through just a couple of opening sequences to see what can go wrong and what kind of RNG we need to go right in order to have a successful run. So there is no preloaded turn meter in this event, which is a big sticking point for a lot of people. It's something I certainly don't like, but to counter that, they just gave the enemy team a really, really high base speed. So they didn't let them take a turn for free. They just gave them crazy speed. And that's kind of worse because if it's preloaded turn meter, well, yeah, they get a free round or two of turns, but then you can keep up with them and it's at least competitive in terms of the turns. With this, their speed's so high, they just outspeed you. So if you don't have turn meter manipulating kits going, if you don't have Zam or whoever going off a Boba lead with thermal detonators, they're just going to keep going before you every single turn rather than just for the first turn. So yeah, be careful what you wish for, because maybe we didn't get preloaded turn meter, but man, we got some crazy speed on these guys. So the opening salvo, a lot of how this goes is going to determine whether the run is worth sticking with or not. And thankfully you can cycle through these pretty quick. You can queue up the battle. You do have to watch that cinematic over and over again, and then they're going to run through their turn in 10 or 15 seconds, and you can take a look at the battlefield and determine if it's worth continuing with the fight. So the things you need to worry about is when you have a low gear level team, there are a ton of AoEs coming at you from this enemy squad, and things like IG-88 and Greedo when he's at gear 9, they just can't survive that many AoEs. So it's not the direct hits you need to worry about. Those, of course, will wipe them out. It's all the AoEs. Chewbacca has a ground pound that does an AoE. R2-D2 has a burning effect that not only does AoE damage, but then takes a chunk of your health on each turn. Lando, AoE. Leia, AoE. So a ton of damage that can put out. However, it's not guaranteed that they use those abilities every time with their opening move. The successful run that I had, Leia actually did not use her, the Snowspeeder Strike, or whatever they call it, the big AoE attack. She didn't use it in her first turn. She used just a single target attack, and that helped out. So, yes, that's rare, but even here you can see in some of these runs, she used her AoE, and I still had all 5 characters survive. So, the RNG, it's a pain. You're going to get a lot of unsuccessful starts, but you will also get a fair amount of times where the RNG works out where you have a shot. And so, along with having all 5 characters survive, not necessary, right? You could probably get through this with 4 if it's the right 4, if they're geared the right way. But Greedo has an important role in this battle, which we'll get to. So, losing him is kind of a big blow. The other thing that's important is that Bossk is the one that does not get stunned with Han Solo's opening attack. Just like the regular raid Han Solo we have in the game, Han opens up with a double tap and it stuns the target. And if you get Bossk hit with that, it slows down the whole way that this team functions. If you're not using Bossk lead, then you don't have to worry about it. But if you are using Bossk lead, the things that you want to do is either open up with his taunt, ideally. If he's got damage, that will heal him. It will taunt and protect the other weaker enemies from direct attack, your other allies from direct attack, and it'll allow him to take a bunch of turns in a row because he gets the Frenzy. And Frenzy means anytime your ally uses a special, Bossk then goes to 100% turn meter. So we'll get to that in a little more detail as well. But if Bossk gets stunned, it slows that whole thing down, and then by the time he recovers from the stun and gets his next turn, do you still have all the people up? The odds of that decrease significantly. So, not getting Bossk stunned, not losing 1 or 2 characters in the first round of attacks from the enemy, these are big, important things that you want to watch for. One of the best ways it can turn out, ironically, is if Boba Fett gets hit with the stun and then gets killed in the opening wave, because he does his self-revive and comes back without the stun. So then he gets his first turn. So I had a couple of times where that was the scenario. Boba Fett took the opening stun, got killed, came back, and then I had all 5 people up and nobody was stunned, and I was ready to roll into my turn. And it didn't always work out after that. You still need a little bit of luck and some RNG and all that to work out. But it is possible for that to work out as well. So we're going to talk about some of the role in the battle and kind of how we want this flow to work out. IG-88 is probably the least important character. He has some area damage, he has some heavy hitting damage, but he just doesn't do anything special enough to be valuable to the team beyond that. So he's kind of cannon fodder. If you Zeta him and you get his target lock on, maybe you have some more utility with him. But if you have somebody that you're going to replace, he's probably the most likely candidate to be replaced. Cad Bane and his stun might be a good choice. You have one of the premium bounty hunters, go ahead and use them in place of IG-88. Everybody else has a really important role to play. Greedo has his turn meter removal and his multi-hit critical chance thing that he can do. So his turn meter removal is important to take away a turn from Han Solo, and Han Solo does a ton of damage early on. So you'll see in the successful run, that was a big part of it. Dengar, when he gets hit critically, he goes stealth, and then once he goes stealth, the enemy team can't stealth. So during the opening turns from the enemy, one of the other things you need to happen is Dengar gets critically hit, goes into stealth, and then when the R2-D2 on the enemy team tries to use smokescreen, none of the enemy go into stealth, they waste their turn, and none of them get blocked from direct attack. All of that is great. That's Dengar's main role. He also tosses out thermals, he also calls assists, so Dengar is important here. Boba Fett, the biggest thing he has, of course, is the self-revive, so he can take a bunch of punishment. He can get that self-revive back if he takes an enemy out, but he has Execute. It does a ton of damage based on the number of buffs or debuffs on the enemy, and it can put up healing immunity, which is important to lock down Chewbacca. So that is the role that everyone's playing. Now we're getting to the successful run here, and we're going to see what happens in the opening sequence. The stun goes to Boba Fett. He takes some damage. We get the stealth from Dengar. They don't go into stealth on the enemy team, and everybody is up. There we go. We got through the opening salvo. All 5 members of my team are up. Nobody is stunned, and this is... actually, Boba Fett was stunned. He took his first turn, lost it to the stun, and is now back. He didn't even lose his self-revive buff. So, now what we're going to do is take our first turn here. And because Boba Fett didn't get to go first, if he does, you probably want to start with the Execute. If there's 4 boxes on Chewbacca, you'll take a big chunk of his health. If you're feeling a little bit greedy, you can do a basic attack, and hopefully you get 1 or 2 dots on Chewbacca from that. And then you're going to hope for the next second turn of Boba Fett to do the Execute. Here, since we have Bossk up, and we have several weak characters, we're going to use our Taunt. So we put the Taunt up, it will heal Bossk if he's damaged, and it will give him Frenzy. So now I have Greedo ready to go. And the thing we don't want to happen is Han Solo to get turns. He does a ton of damage, he can stun, all of that is really bad. So Greedo is going to remove Han Solo's turn meter, prevent that next turn. Remember, Han can't be stunned because he's guarded by Chewbacca with that special new buff that Chewbacca puts on Han Solo. So you can't stun Han, but you can remove his turn meter. Great ability from Greedo, and that will usually give him a bunch of turn meter, and it also allows Bossk to go because that's a special. So now we can use Bosk's hunting party, I believe it's called, where he shoots the net and does a swarm attack. Everybody gets called in. Hopefully you get a stun on Chewbacca. We do here, and now look at all those boxes on Chewbacca. Now if we can hit and Execute, man, that's really going to do some damage, especially if we can get a crit. So I have IG-88 here. He does a normal attack. Again, IG-88 is just applying more damage when he can, but other than that, he's not doing anything too critical. The other thing Dengar can do is stun. He can charge in and stun a character that has over 50% turn meter. Unfortunately, it just whiffs on R2-D2. That might have been a mistake. I probably should have thrown out the detonators there. They count as another debuff. They'll take health off. When they explode, you can get some turn meter going, depending on how your team is set up. But in this case, we don't get the stun off, but we're still okay. R2-D2 goes for the burn. Everybody's still in it, but I know I'm going to lose Greedo here on this turn. So the 2 options are to go for a basic attack, and hopefully he gets a crit chain going and gets a bunch of damage in, or we can throw out the thermal detonator and know that we've got some banked damage. We do that. We throw out the thermal detonator. He gets taken out by Leia's AoE, and now we're up to Dengar again. This time we're going to throw some detonators out. So we've got a couple out there. There's the power of Han Solo. A big attack wipes out IG-88. So now things are not looking great here. We lose Boba Fett the first time, but we can see that Chewbacca's lost almost all his protection, and we have 3 characters basically at full health, 2 of them still with a big amount of protection. So we get another taunt up on Bossk. That again gives him the frenzy. Boba Fett is up. This is kind of a choice here. Lando is a decent Execute target here, but we're not trying to protect any weak AoE character. So instead, we do an Execute on Chewbacca. Get a big chunk of damage in, put up healing immunity, and by using the special, we get Bossk to go again. So we can use the hunting party. We call in the swarm attack, get another stun, pile up some damage, and now we have Boba Fett ready with a double attack. And on top of that, the thermals go off, and we take out Chewbacca, and that is the first step. getting Chewbacca down. If you don't control him early, he gets too much health regen, and he becomes a problem putting out all that damage. So now the next prime target is Han Solo, but he can counterattack. It's not 100%, but he can do it. So you don't want to be just sending over basic attacks that are going to result in a lot of damage coming back to your team. So instead, I'm focusing on Lando, and hopefully I can do it in a way that Boba Fett gets the final kill so that he'll get his regen back. Again, everyone is being protected by Bossk's taunt. He's got a ton of health and protection. He's at gear 12. So here we go. We've got the stun up, and I decide to go for Leia, and I miss it. I don't want to kill Lando with anybody other than Boba Fett. So there we go. We avoid Lando. It's Boba's turn. He takes out Lando and now has his buff back. And now it's 3-on-3 with a self-revive and with a healthy Gear 12 taunting tank and Dengar once again in stealth, again blocking that R2-D2 smokescreen. So here we go. We got execute up again from Boba Fett, and we really want to get Han Solo down. This is a big chance to do a chunk of damage. So 3 boxes is enough. Probably not to kill Han. If we crit, it would, but we don't. But that's enough to take most of his health. We once again can call him the swarm attack. Han goes down, and now it's 2-on-3. We're in even better shape. Leia's the next target. She can do decent damage, but at this point the major threats are down, and it looks like this is going to be a successful run. At this point my blood was pumping, and I was starting to think it was going to work. I was about a half hour, maybe 40 minutes into my testing. This is after bumping up to gear 12. I'd done a bunch of runs before giving Bossk the Zeta and going up to the gear levels that I'm at now and just not getting anywhere close. So now we can taste it. It's just R2-D2 left. Leia's down. It doesn't really matter at this point. We're just kind of finishing off our final abilities. We'll heal up. We'll put up the taunt. Get some thermals out there. One final swarm attack. Not quite enough. Boba Fett execute. There we go. And R2-D2 is down. And that's enough to unlock 7-star Chewbacca. So it's hard. It requires a ton of gear. It's different than the previous legendary events. The previous ones, you had to panic farm for the characters, and the gear levels were lower. In this, we've had access to bounty hunters for a long time, so instead of it being a character check, it's a gear check. And a huge part of it is the RNG working out. Be patient, recognize the pattern. If your speeds are a little different than mine based on mods, your strategy might have to tweak a little bit to fit that in, right? My Greedo was always set up that I knew he was going to get his chance to do his turn meter removal right before Han took his next big turn where he pumped out a lot of damage. If your speeds are off, that might not be the case for you. But for me, I knew that was key. I needed Greedo to be up. I needed him to get that turn meter removal off. And then after that, it didn't matter if Greedo died because he delayed long enough for the rest of my swarm attacks to come in and get Chewbacca to the point where I could eliminate him. So be patient. Run that RNG. Find the spot that works. Find the setup that works. And then just keep running that start of the battle over and over again until you get the setup you want. And then from there, even though I got that right setup a number of times, I still lost the battle because of how the RNG worked out in it. It took about 5 or 6 of those perfect starts for the right one to actually work out all the way through the battle. And Chewbacca is a really great character. He works with some rebels, and it looks like he can take out Traya in certain compositions. I'm sure there's going to be some nice damage numbers he put up in the Sith raid. He's going to be part of Territory Wars, and he'll help you out in territory battles as well. So good luck with the event. Hopefully this helped you guys out. If it did, feel free to let me know in the comments below. Let me know how this event worked out for you. Did you like it? What level Chewbacca did you get? Or are you going to wait for next time? Plan for about 3 months for the return of Chewbacca. Plan your gear accordingly for that. It might be a little longer. It might be a little shorter, but you want to start gearing up to the levels that I'm showing you so you know. And if you don't have Bossk, get him. He's a great leader. I really recommend him for this battle and for running bounty hunters in general. So thank you for joining me. Good luck with Chewbacca, and I'll see you next time.